Okay, my name is McKeely Willis.
I'm Erin Thurgood.
I'm Emily Jackson.
I'm Susan Acey.
I'm Sarah Anderson.
I'm Bradley Williamson.
Okay. And Erin said she's going to go first, so she's going to start, and we'll go from there.
Okay, let me just open up my speech. Okay. It isn't easy when a family member struggles with a pornography addiction. For many years, we didn't realize it was occurring in our home until he was caught in the act by our parents. Ever since he was young, he struggled with being honest, even with the smallest things. That dishonesty led to a pornography addiction, which later led to an unwanted pregnancy with his girlfriend. I am sure he didn't plan for any of these things to happen, but they did happen. And it put a giant rain cloud over our home for several years. We were disgusted, confused, and disappointed, but we loved and supported him. Through that support and hard work on his part, new and positive beginnings took place in his life as he became a father and a husband. In the Webster Dictionary, pornography is defined as pictures or writings describing sexual behavior and intended to cause sexual excitement. On the website Fight the New Drug, one of their blog posts says, repeated consumption of porn causes the brain to literally rewire itself. It triggers the brain to pump out chemicals and form new nerve pathways, leading to profound and lasting changes in the brain. The more someone views pornography, the more they need it. Our brains are considered to be one of our hungriest organs, and any addiction can cause the brain to crave more until it gets what it wants. We may believe that pornography mainly affects middle-aged men, but it also affects women and children. In a study by Simone Kuhn and Jürgen Galliant, the relationship between the brain and pornography research found that 66% of men and 41% of women consume pornography on a monthly basis. Also, in a review of the research on the impact of internet pornography on marriage and the family says that in the United States during the month of April 2005, 4,803 children and adolescents between the ages of 2 and 17 were exposed to or sought out pornography online. This age group also represented 13.97% of all online pornography consumption. Pornography is a growing problem amongst families and children, and most of it is based on the use of technology. From the years 1972 to 2010, 18,225 U.S. women over the age of 18 participated in a general social survey. Based on those surveys, they found that in the 1970s, 28% of women consumed pornography, in the 1980s, 28%, the 1990s, 29%, and in the 2000s, 34%. Technology has given us the internet, and the internet became available to families in the 1990s and 2000s, which is around the time that my brother got involved in internet pornography. Internet pornography consumption threatens the economic, relational, and emotional stability of marriages and families. When referring to children directly, they have easy access to internet pornography, can weaken the success of their future relationships, and promote earlier sexual intercourse, which is exactly what took place in my brother's life. Indirectly, meaning a parent involved with pornography will threaten the child's well-being by undermining the stability of marital and family relationships, increase the risk of being exposed to such content, and the discovery or disclosure of a parent's addiction may enforce the need for sexual dialogue before the parent and or child is ready. Pornography threatens and the loving relationships full of trust, communication, and joy families are meant to experience. Earlier I mentioned the Fight of the New Drug program. They campaign an anti-pornography message while being a nonprofit organization. The mission states that they exist to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. This awareness teaches that pornography harms the brain, damages relationships, and affects society as a whole. They recognize that too many of us in society didn't understand what pornography does and is, and they treat it as a public health issue. To spread this awareness, they have given over 300 presentations to schools across North America, reaching hundreds of thousands of teenagers. Through social media, they have created a movement known as Porn Kills Love. Rather than just focusing on the symptoms, they have a program called the Fortify program to help individuals who are already struggling with an addiction. They present this message to educate and provide resources if individuals are struggling or are too ashamed to get the help they need. Fight the New Drug is strengthening families because they also have a way to educate parents. Their book titled The Guideline, A Parent's Guide to Addressing Pornography with Children, provides research and feedback from emails from teenagers to help parents understand what they can do to prevent and help with pornography addictions. Our government has several other laws against child pornography, but they can do more to prevent it from existing. They should provide more programs to help those who need it. There should be stronger ways to secure and to keep the children of our generation from coming across things they shouldn't. As a society, we can view it as a public health issue, as Fight the New Drug does. This is something that individuals don't necessarily want to struggle with, but that addiction flows within their brains. We should show love and compassion to those who need it so that they feel they can remove this rain cloud in their lives. As individuals, we can be there for those who need it. We need to teach our current or future children about what it is and what exactly should be done when it becomes present. We should be as understanding as we can be and help individuals to make their own decisions on what they should do. Overcoming an addiction is a personal decision and takes a lot of hard work. But once that decision is made and that work is put into action, that individual can become exactly who they want and are meant to become. That's it. Any questions?
I thought that was really good. One question that I had is you mentioned that like there are laws that start to protect against pornography. Do you know like what those are? And you could have like mentioned them.
There were a few that I kind of looked into, but most of them focused on like children and pornography,
So more
on children basically.
Was it more on viewing the pornography or was it more on using them for pornographic purposes?
I think it was kind of both, but basically if people were caught selling or viewing or doing things like that, they were fined or put into jail for many years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That was my question.
So what do you say to people who go, it's my right to free speech. I have a right to either participate in pornography or other people are allowed to participate in pornography because they're choosing it. And if you don't want to do it, it's violating my First Amendment rights.
So what is your question? Sorry, I kind of kept going in and out. Sorry.
It doesn't happen all the time. So what do you say to people who go, this is my right to free speech. If I choose to participate in pornography, then that's fine. And if someone decides they want to actively engage in pornography, then that's their decision. And to go against saying that they can do this behavior is violating their First Amendment right.
I would probably say that, yeah, it is your choice, but in reality, you're hurting the society in many ways and you're hurting yourself. And if you're participating in like children pornography, that can cause you to go to jail. And like it is a choice, but it's up to you to recognize what the circumstances can be.
I liked how you used personal life and a personal story along with all of your facts. That was.
Thanks.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I thought about not doing it, but I was like, well, this will be a good thing to add in there. So.
Potential. I liked it.
Thanks.
So I got a question. So when people start viewing pornography, do they get really, how do they justify the fact that what they're doing is right? Do you know?
Well, there was something that I looked into whenever we did the family research and evidence summary abstract, and I did find some articles that talked about how individuals believe that watching pornography helps them with their stress, and it helps them maintain their depression, improves their mood, and people just want that sexual gratification and arousal. So some people do believe that it's a good thing. So yeah, kind of sad, but yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Nope.
Who's it?
Okay, then I'm going to do
Victim.
mine. Bradley and I both did ours on divorce. So hopefully we took kind of different sides to it. But in 1857, the Matrimonial Causes Act allowed regular, everyday people to receive a divorce. Before that, divorces were granted on a sexist basis and were granted mainly to men of mean, and only if the act were granted by Parliament, which was very expensive and quite an ordeal to complete. Fast forward about 100 years to when Governor Ronald Reagan passed the No-Fault Divorce Act, and it became a law in 1970. Slowly but surely, each state passed this law, and in 2010, New York became the last state to pass the no-fault divorce law. Previous to this law, you had to have a major fault against one member of the marriage, such as adultery, abuse, a criminal offense, neglect or abandonment, or another major issue to receive a divorce. The no-fault divorce law got rid of that requirement and made it so anyone who was not in marital bliss and wanted a divorce could receive one. They did not have to have a reason or a quote-unquote fault. After the no-fault divorce law passed, everywhere, divorce became something that anyone could receive. Getting out of an unhappy marriage became so easy, and according to the American Psychology Association, 40 to 50% of all marriages today end in divorce. And if a member of that divorced couple does remarry, the rate for divorce is even higher. Almost half of people today that are getting married are getting divorces. And most people don't even get married, or if they do, they get married at a much later age. That's really scary. Couples are no longer marrying, quote, as long as they both shall live. It's become as long as they are both getting along, and the first bump in the road will go to the courthouse and file divorce. That's something to be worried about. We're worried about divorce because of the effect that it has on children and the family. Divorce under the no-fault divorce law is very selfish and usually only benefits the married couple. They're not thinking about saving the family or relationship. They're trying to take the easy way out. They're not thinking about their children who may have to have split custody and spend 50% of their time with mom and 50% of their time with dad because there is no fault, so therefore no reason that the court would grant sole custody to one over the other parent. They're not thinking about the fact that many studies show that children of divorced parents have lower academic achievements, such as graduating from high school or college, and they don't think the fact that children from divorced homes have difficult times making friends and forming social relationships that last, because the example of a relationship they thought would last forever was broken up under the no-fault divorce law. Many of these children in divorced families are being affected too young to even understand or comprehend why the split is happening and what it means for them. These children are also at an increased risk of substance and hard drug abuse, which leads to behavior problems and addictions. These difficulties and struggles become even worse for children as they become adults. I'm not trying to say that all divorce is bad, and there are times that a divorce is necessary and acceptable. Adultery, abuse, criminal offenses, and other major issues can be good and needed cause for a divorce. But falling out of marital harmony or experiencing difficulties in marriage is not a major unrepairable issue. Working together as husband and wife, you can repair a relationship and get back to marital bliss that you had experienced when you were first married. Growing up, my dad taught me a valuable lesson. When something I loved, such as a toy, a game, a book, or other objects, were getting worn out or broken, and all my hope was lost, he would never let me throw it away and just go buy a new one. Together, we worked really hard and we fixed it. We would sew up the ripped stuffed animals, repair board games, put new batteries into toys, or strengthen the spine of books falling apart. Growing up, I thought that he did this because money was tight and we didn't have money to buy new toys, which I'm sure was one reason. But I think he was also trying to teach me a valuable lesson, that there are things that are worth fixing and working through rather than throwing away. Marriage is worth fixing and working through. Marriage is amazing and wonderful and great, but there will be hard times. There are going to be disagreements and difficulties and struggles. I've only been married 6 months, and I have experienced my fair share. Yes, there are stormy days, but those days are not the end, and it should be worked through together. You should always work and fight for something you love. Therefore, what I propose we do is to get rid of the no-fault divorce law. Marriage should not be a temporary relationship. It should be forever. Marriage is not something you can run away from when it is no longer convenient for you. A family and children is not something you can just leave without thinking about the repercussions and the effects that the separation would have on them. We need to make it so that marriage is something that is lasting and forever. We need to get away from the no-fault divorce. You do not throw away something you once loved because it breaks. You work at it and you fix it. And that's the end.
Good job. Hey, I like the way you came up with you created the problem, or you told us the problem, and then you came up with a solution. I really like that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, we're kind of supposed to play devil's advocate, I think, a little bit. So
Yeah.
My question is, children with with parents who have multiple divorces actually have increased social networks. How would you increase those social networks if divorce isn't in the picture?
They would increase their social network through school. School's a great work to have social network when parents that are together have friends that are together and they do like family play dates, they go on family trips with other families, they have that network. When a divorce happens, that network is actually broken because the mom's not going to want to hang out with the dad's friends, and so those child's friends that they've grown up with are now broken apart. So there's pros and cons to that because they do receive a bigger network through their parents making new friends and having a new network, but the network that they had built their foundation on is broken.
Good point. And children have to choose between mom's friends and dad's friends, and they're caught in between, and they're young and they don't have the experience, and it's horrible.
It's true.
So a lot of people say, oh, we don't want to put our kids through this any longer. We're fighting all the time. We don't want to keep going like this. The kids will be better off without this terrible situation we're putting them through. What do you think? What would you say?
Most of the
Do you
time
agree with that?
that a parent is fighting, there's a deeper problem. It's not just, oh, you didn't do the dishes. It's something else that's deeper that they need to probably go see a counselor to resolve. There are marriage counselors. If they're a member of the church, a lot of churches offer counseling because almost any issue, unless it is something like abuse or neglect, can be worked through and it can be solved through proper counseling and work. If they're willing to work it out, many couples that do fight, it's easier to fight than to sit down and talk about it. It's much easier just to fight. So if they were to just sit down and talk about it, go and take the steps to go see a counselor and make the effort in order to successfully repair their marriage, it would actually be stronger if they were willing to make that step.
I guess one question I have would probably be like, what determines how like children react to divorce in a marriage? Like, what will make them think or react or act on when their parents do get divorced? Like, what do you think causes those things the most?
Well, I think that one thing that causes it is, like I mentioned before, the foundation. When children are born, especially if they are born in a marriage, they grow up thinking that this is my family. I have a mom and I have a dad and they're always going to be there. And then, like Susan brought up, there normally is conflict. And they see that and they're confused. And then that conflict ends up breaking something that their foundation, it breaks what they thought would always be there. And then because of that, a lot of them act out through the drug abuse, through the substance abuse, sometimes even criminal behaviors. Because of that, their social network, as Emily said, was broken. So they have a hard time recovering socially, leading to the social issues. And the academic progress, it's hard being split parents and having the same academic responsibilities. I've seen friends where their mom expected them to get straight A's, but they only lived with their mom 2 days a week, and dad didn't care if they did their homework. And so it's really hard when there's split expectations. And so there's a lot of things that could lead to children's behaviors after a divorce. Any other questions?
Do you think that by getting rid of the no-fault divorce, that might raise a lot of the litigation and court costs and make it more expensive and maybe hurt families even more because now they have to come up with more money to get a divorce?
Well, I don't think that it would cause divorce to be more expensive. I think that it would cause it to be harder. So couples would have to work harder to get it. So they'd have to say, okay, is the cost and is the effort that I'm going to put into this worth getting a divorce? Or would it be easier to work it out? Would it be easier to just go see a counselor? Would it be easier to sit down and talk rather than to get a divorce? And so what I brought up, I really liked the very beginning that I talked about the original divorce law, the Matrimonial Causes Act, because it talked about how divorce was not easy. You had to go through Parliament. You had to pay a lot of money. You didn't do it just because you and your spouse had a fight. You did it because there was a major issue that could not be repaired. And that's how divorce should be. It shouldn't be over one little issue. It should be over something that is affecting the marriage so much that the marriage relationship can no longer be repaired. Did that answer your question? Bradley, did that answer your question? Kind of?
I'm convinced.
Okay, awesome. And I think Emily, is now a good time, or do you want to wait a little bit?
It should be okay.
Okay, perfect.
Well, it's okay. All right. So, a few months ago, I started having nightmares about my work and where I am a nurse in a medical clinic. Very vivid and disturbing, these dreams were about patients who had decided to take their lives with the assistance of a physician under Canada's new medical assistance in dying laws. The last dream was about an 80-something-year-old woman with good family support, full cognitive abilities, and many more months or even years left to live in what could be relatively good health, and she has now passed away. I had a guilty conscience knowing that where I worked was engaging in actively taking life, and that I was expected to go along with this concept despite my many different objections that were known to the clinic. I am not alone in my hatred of this process, which is becoming more acceptable worldwide. In Belgium, a study on nurses found that powerlessness was the dominant feeling expressed by nurses, and an Oregon study found that there is a huge burden on conscience, tangled emotions, and a large psychological toll on the participating physicians. But the difficulties in accepting medical assistance in dying are not limited to health professionals. Family members experience traumatic grief similar to the grief associated with suicide, and in Switzerland, they found that assisted dying causes a great risk for family members experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. A large European study found that over half of families disagreed with medical assistance in dying, and another study in Oregon found similar results, and also that there was a breakdown in communication in families where the opinions and desires of family members were not discussed regarding assisted dying, and this had a negative impact on how the family coped with death. Some stress came from caregiving for a patient with long-term illness, but it was the lack of social support that impacted families and not the physical and emotional caring for the loved one that was associated with the acceptance of assisted dying. Focusing on Oregon again, which is among one of 6 states and the District of Columbia that allow for assisted dying and has had laws in place for the longest and the most studies done, we find the following problems with assisted dying according to Wirth and Weinberg after they conducted an analysis of the criticism of euthanasia practice. We found that there were problems in maintaining privacy, underreporting of those who accessed euthanasia services, laws that protected doctors and not the patient, difficulties diagnosing terminal illness, lack of palliative care services, lack of options concerning pain control, lack of monitoring regarding the practice of assisted dying, lack of psychiatric evaluation, and the idea that assisted dying was more affordable than other end-of-life care options. Policies that protect the doctors and limit the care of patients are not in the best interest of families or society. The individualistic policies that are not family-focused and do not address the problems with palliative care access, but provide a solution that results in the premature ending of life and undermines the family right to care for their loved one. Organizations such as True Dignity, based in Vermont, can provide information about the negative impacts of assisted dying and ways that family advocates can become involved against the assisted dying movement. I am not insensitive to the suffering of people as they near the end of their lives. I have been a nurse for years and have seen firsthand the difficulties that the ill and their families face when a terminal diagnosis has been given. I have sat beside people as their lives have come to an end and have cried with family members as they say goodbye to someone that they loved. I have also had to give comfort to the members of families whose loved ones have committed suicide, which is an almost impossible task. I understand why someone would not want to put their family member through the difficulty of a long and drawn-out death, but at the same time see the negative effects it has on those families for the patients to end their life. When death comes naturally, I have found there is more acceptance and understanding by families. This is not an argument for prolonging life at all costs, but to let nature take its course and to control pain and provide relief to families by good palliative care, social assistance, and pain control. There are some very basic ways we can improve our care of the terminally ill. Let patients have access to pain control. Pain control is a major concern in end-of-life care, and it can be effective, but patients and their families need to assert their right for this medication. At the same time, doctors, colleges, and universities need to add information on pain control and palliative care to their curriculum so that all physicians and nurses are informed as to the options available to their patients and how best to implement pain control. Palliative care needs to be an option for patients at the end of life. Lack of access to home care or inpatient programs or hospices is critical in addressing the needs of an aging population. Funding may be an issue for these programs, which is why insurance companies need to offer long-term investments that will protect the individual should they be diagnosed with a terminal illness. Expanding palliative care programs can also end up being less expensive for states because patients are kept from long hospital stays that are expensive and demanding on the medical system. As a nation, the United States can make sure that the government is continually lobbied to ensure that assisted dying remains unconstitutional. Rather than ending the lives of our ill, we need to realize that they can live with dignity and values surrounded by those they love until the end of their natural lives. It is difficult now to reverse the laws in Canada and European countries that will allow for assisted dying, but in the United States, where many states still do not have laws regulating this process, we can stop euthanasia from becoming legal and instead implement policies that will strengthen families as they face the end of a life with dignity. That's it.
That was really good.
Sorry, my computer kind of expands and shrinks the screen sometime without reason. I don't know why. Anyway.
Oh my God, that was really good. So you said that there were in your clinic that also agree, is that correct?
That they agree? Sorry?
That they disagree with the...
No, my clinic has this practice where they will fill out the forms for assisted dying.
Oh, okay.
So in my clinic, they know that I don't agree with the policies, but they do it anyway.
Okay.
Right, and I don't really participate in this process as much as I can, but sometimes like the paperwork comes across my desk and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Is it a really accepted policy in Canada?
It's only been there for a year, so it's becoming more acceptable.
And why was it enacted for you guys?
They just wanted it. Canada tends to be a little bit more progressive with social policy. So like when gay marriage came into the States, we'd already had it for 10 years. Like we just tend to follow Europe a little bit more closely and do things a little bit ahead of the States. So because it's becoming a trend in Europe, it was a trend in Canada.
Okay. Do they not see it as suicide then?
They don't really see it as suicide. They see it as compassionate ending of life. But it is assisted suicide. Like you can call it by its many different names, but it's physician-assisted death or assisted suicide or euthanasia or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
So can doctors accept or not accept it in their practices, or does everybody?
If you choose not to do assisted dying, you have to refer to someone else who will fill out the forms.
And is it done in the person's home, or do they come into the clinic, or?
You have options. You get the papers filled out in the clinic, but the procedure itself can be done in a hospital, in a nursing home, or in the patient's home.
I see. Do you think the law will ever change, or do you think it'll always stay there?
Well, if you look at places like the Netherlands, they've had this law for 30, 40 years, and it hasn't been revoked. It's actually becoming more of an issue. They've extended it to children now and to babies. So it's called the slippery slope, and what happens is once you enact it for a certain group of people, the more people are allowed to engage in it. So originally it's just for people who have a terminal illness. Then it becomes for those who have mental health issues. Then it becomes children who have chronic illnesses and they want it. It becomes for disabled people who want to end their lives. And eventually it becomes babies who are born with a terminal illness or a medical condition and they want to end their lives as well.
Are doctors actually allowed to recommend it to families, or is it basically what the family wants at the beginning?
This depends again on the country you're in. So in Canada, you have to go over all your options. So you have to go through, you have this right to palliative care services, you have this right to home care services, we have these pain control options, and we have assisted dying. In Oregon, though, you could just go in and ask for the medication to end your life, and then you just take it home and take it. I think, yeah.
I am not retiring in Canada.
Why is that?
That's what I learned. If I get sick, I don't want someone to kill me. I don't want to go right now.
No one's going to kill you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Why?
I misheard you. You want to say your speech again?
It's assisted dying. They're not going to kill you unless you
Oh,
say,
okay.
hey, I want
That
this.
you want it.
If you want to die, come to Canada. Sure.
All right. Okay. Wait. Okay. I was making light of a serious subject.
Any other questions
I'm good
for
at that.
Emily? Okay, Susan, you're up next, okay?
Okay. Okay. Before Roe versus Wade, women traveled hundreds of miles to get an abortion. How do I know this? My college roommate was one of them. My freshman year probably began a lot like yours, with football games, dorm food, and all-night study sessions, but then I discovered my roommate was pregnant. She didn't tell me at first, but I can't blame her because she hadn't discovered it herself yet. It wasn't until we arrived back after Thanksgiving break that she confided in me that she'd seen her family doctor and she was 5 months along. She hadn't told her folks about the baby and she had decided upon an abortion. See, abortions were only legal in the state of New York in 1970, and it was a long way from Iowa to New York City. After running away in a failed rendezvous attempt for a back alley abortion, she made it back to campus, finding her parents in the lobby of the dorm. The family consensus was abortion, and my roommate and her father flew to the state of New York to terminate her pregnancy. According to the American Journal of Public Health, the state of New York became a destination for pregnant women looking to terminate, and 139,042 abortions were filed with the New York City Health Department. Of these, 50,919 were residents, and 88,123 were non-residents. Then, in 1973, the Supreme Court, in the popular case of Roe v. Wade, legalized abortion in every state, and according to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, over 50 million legal abortions have occurred from 1973 through 2013. Abortion is a threat to human life, children, and families. Pro-choice supporters believe that it's a woman's choice to choose because it's her body and therefore her decision. Pro-life supporters believe that the child is separate from the mother and has its own rights. I believe that life starts at conception, and while I was studying for my psychology exam this week, my textbook read, "You probably calculate your age by counting your birthdays, but the fact is that on the day you were born, you were already 9 months old." The debate continues on in the classic argument that no one knows when life begins, or it's just a blob of tissue, are waning. More facts from my psychology book states that human beings develop at an astonishingly rapid pace, and after 22 days, a child's heart begins to beat separate from their mother's and can be detected on ultrasound. The polls are starting to lean in the favor of pro-life since about 2009, and a recent Morris Poll Knights of Columbus survey found that 83 to 95% of the people polled today believe abortion should never be permitted under any circumstance. So why has there been such a turn against the supportive side of abortion? I believe it's because of the sadness families feel when they realize the severity of the loss of an aborted child. There are countless heart-wrenching stories on the internet of those who have had abortions and the sadness it has caused them, their children, and other family members. One brother said, "My brother got rid of his kid. I wish I would have had the nephew or niece." A grandmother said, "I'm grieving a missing person from my family. This is not a fair choice." A mother said, "I'm in pain. My son is in pain. His girlfriend had an abortion." A surviving sibling said, "I find myself wishing that I had been aborted instead of my sibling." A mother said, "Not a single day has gone by that I don't think about my poor baby and that I don't regret what I've done." In my own case, my brother's girlfriend confided in me that she had had an abortion. I was in shock and cried for days. I still think about the child that never was. Mothers who have abortions deny a child a life and deny a family a beautiful child. Society tells women that abortion will solve their problems. It says nothing about the problems abortion creates. The untold stories of how abortion changed their lives is not up for public knowledge, and most people are ashamed about their inability to deal with the grief. Pro-life advocates have been working steadily to eradicate abortion for over 40 years, but to no avail. Maybe someday soon it could happen, but my concern is about the millions of women who have had abortions and have no one to turn to. My issue is, where can someone get help after the abortion? Or better yet, why doesn't the government set up programs that will explain the details of the aftermath of abortion and make it mandatory for mothers, fathers, and families to attend the programs beforehand so that they can aid in recovery or help them make a better choice? The government can make the law that abortion is legal, but they don't address the issue of how it affects the children and members of the family. I searched the internet in hopes of finding a government program that supported the emotional side of abortion recovery and came up empty-handed. I did find faith-based programs on the internet that devote help mostly to the people who are having the abortion, but not the family. I found one organization, Elliott Institute, a national nonprofit organization that has been advocating and researching abortion's impact on women, children, and families since 1983. This institution is pro-life and pro-family and fosters post-abortion healing. The Institute is involved in research, education, and outreach to those struggling with a past abortion. Their primary website is www.afterabortion.org and includes information on research findings, abortion risks, personal testimonies, healing resources, and more. They have a free e-newsletter and can be found on Facebook and Twitter. Child and family advocates should be part of this organization because this institute is reaching out to strengthen families by educating parents, reaching out to the community with peer-reviewed articles, and have organized committees for public hearings, and they challenge the Roe v. Wade at the government level. Therefore, we can't give up because this really matters. We cannot be silent anymore as long as the plague of abortion is in our midst. With resources like Elliott Institute, we can educate and reach out to those that have been misinformed and are suffering and begin to bring awareness of the damage abortion does to children, families, and women. That's it.
That was really good. So again, kind of playing devil's advocate, like Emily said earlier, what if it was an accident and there was nothing that happened and the family doesn't even need to be involved or know? They don't have to know. So why do you think that, like you talked about the family a lot, the family has nothing to do with it. It's a personal choice and no one has to know except for me.
You're asking me if...
So, like you were talking about how it affects the family. I don't agree with that. It's a very personal thing. I think that it only affects the person. Why do you think that it affects the family if they don't have to know?
Well, after reading some of the things that people say, you can definitely tell that it hurts not just one person, it hurts the whole group. You hear grandmothers say, you know, I mourn the loss of a grandchild. You hear brothers say that they miss the nephew that never came about. I had a situation where that happened in my family, and I was totally devastated when my sister-in-law told me that she had had an abortion before my brother and her had gotten married, and I thought, oh, you've got to be kidding. I felt so sad. I mean, it just doesn't affect the person who got the abortion. It affects a lot of people, and they may not know in the beginning that the abortion happened, but years down the road, people are so guilt-ridden that they'll somehow just tell people that it happened without people, and then people, it never goes away. I think it's kind of like pornography. It just settles in your brain, and that feeling just never goes away.
What about situations that might be beyond the person's control? Like, I've had people come into my clinic asking for abortions before. One already had 6 children, and if she got pregnant again, her life was in danger. Had very young people, 13, 14 years, come in. I've had seriously depressed people come in asking for abortions. Don't they have the right to say, I need this for my health?
I don't think so, because I think it's a lot like the divorce situation with the no-fault divorce. It's the same thing with abortion. There are other avenues, and there are lots and lots of people out there that would love to raise a child that are infertile, can't have babies, that people could get matched up with. And I know at one time my mother-in-law, she had a young girl stay with her that was 18, I believe, and was having a baby and was going to give it up for adoption, and it was through the church. And they found a family for her to hook her little baby up with. And then at the last minute, she sat there and cried for days and days and days, and finally went to the hospital and picked it up. And the man that was the father of the child came, and they got married, and off they went. But I think that there's all kinds of possibilities other than abortion.
Do you think that making adoption easier and more accessible could help lower the rate?
Okay, I didn't quite hear you, but I thought something about cost.
The cost of adoption.
Okay, I didn't.
Making adoption easier, would that help lower the abortion rate?
Oh, okay. Yes, I do think so. I think that if people, I mean, if they had a good reason to carry the child and thought that that it would have a good family. My best friend is adopted, and she absolutely loved her parents. She never thought of them as not being even her biological parents. She just feels that, and she has no thoughts of looking up her biological parents. So adoption is a wonderful way of taking care of the situation rather than getting an abortion.
Okay, awesome. Sarah, you ready to go?
Let me unmute. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. All right. Okay. So there you are, looking at the new car you've always had your eye on, and you listen to the salesman describe each feature of the vehicle while you breathe in that one-of-a-kind new car smell. There's only one thing left to do. Take a test drive, of course. You have to make sure it's really going to work out for you, right? That's the same idea many young people in the U.S. are applying to relationships and marriage. This is a generation who has grown up in the world where nearly half of marriages end in divorce. They've seen their parents split up and have experienced the pain that comes from a marriage ending. Naturally, many of these children grow up to be adults who are wary of the idea of marriage. While morals have continued to decline in this country, premarital sexual relations have become more than accepted. They're almost expected through much of American society. Now we have a generation who accepts premarital sex and who are pretty nervous about the idea of marriage. They have become the test drivers, jumping from relationship to relationship, seldom making the commitment to enter into marriage. Worse yet, nearly 20% of women become pregnant within the first year of their first cohabitating relationship. Innocent children then enter these homes built on instability and uncertainty. Just as they start learning to rely on mom and dad both taking care of them, their parents decide to break up. It turns out their test drive isn't as fun as it used to be. For these children, a bomb drops on their sense of trust in the world and people. Suddenly, they don't know who they can trust, who will be there to take care of them, and they change homes and cities until mom finds a new boyfriend to move in with. Then there's the confusion of what each new man is to the child. Is this daddy number 2 or 3? Then mom gets pregnant with a new boyfriend, and the family dynamics grow exponentially more complex and unstable. Transitioning in and out of cohabitating homes has been shown to have the most enduring negative impact on children. They learn that home is not a safe and stable place, and the adults in their lives are not to be relied on. Negative behaviors grow as their academic performance and social development plummet. At-risk behaviors such as substance abuse and premarital sex become much more likely, as well as their tendency for these children to repeat the cycle of premarital cohabitation when they reach adulthood. And the cycle repeats. Does that sound like the future we want for our children? Even though cohabitating is socially accepted today, it has not become any less damaging to the marriages that follow it. Of course, that's only if the relationships transition to marriage. Research shows a gradual shift in attitudes towards marriage in these relationships over time. The expectation for marriage to follow is slowly disappearing. Cohabitating started out being a step that immediately preceded marriage. Now, many couples think, why even go through the trouble of getting married? Living together prior to marriage has a significant negative association with both relationship stability and quality. When two people move in together, they create an unsteady foundation, much like building a home on a foundation of sand. Then they add children to the relationship and start to really feel the stresses and lack of strength in their relationship. Their trial run isn't just temporary after they brought children into the world. Unfortunately, it's these children that have to live with the pain and uncertainty of their lives, all because mom and dad didn't want to make a marriage commitment. There's a growing amount of states who have accepted cohabitation to one degree or another. Some states who offer civil unions and domestic partnerships to cohabitating couples, whether they are the opposite or the same sex. This gives cohabitating couples the same privileges and rights as married couples. The gay community jumped in on this wave and made sure that the wording included same-sex cohabitation. This then led to the same-sex marriage being legalized in many states now. Giving cohabitating couples legal rights that only married couples had before has opened the gates to not only more cohabitation and broken families, but also more anti-family movements such as same-sex marriage and adoption by those couples. Again, the children are the victims. We have to stand up and speak out in defense of traditional marriage. Youth and children need to understand that there are very good and valid reasons to get married and that they can have a successful marriage. In our homes, we need to teach our children not only that marriage should be between a man and woman, but why they should get married in the first place. We need to teach them that sexual relationships are to be had between a husband and wife and why cohabitation is so hazardous. The world is going to tell them that basically everyone does it. Everybody lives together before marriage, right? We have to provide them with a solid foundation of knowledge about why it doesn't matter how common it is. Living together before marriage is dangerous and essentially signs a death warrant on the relationship. Often there are children that come into the family before then, and they are the innocent victims of these adults who are afraid of the commitment that accompanies marriage. We need to stay vigilant in our communities, paying attention to what is being taught in schools that may be anti-family. We can serve on school boards or city councils so that we can have even more influence on what is being taught to our children and what our community is being exposed to on a daily basis. We can stay informed and support local, state, and federal political candidates who support and uphold traditional family values. We need to join forces with organizations that advocate around the country and world for the rights and protection of the traditional marriage and families. We have the knowledge and therefore the responsibility to share with the world that premarital cohabitation destroys families. It destroys individuals and it destroys children. For those children, we have to stand up. That's it. Questions?
Did you mention any laws that have to do with cohabitation?
So all the research that I did, I looked on that for quite a while, and basically what it's been in the last 50, 60 years, it's gone from most states having anti-cohabitating laws, like making it illegal to live together before marriage. Most states had that, and then it's just gradually state by state by state, those have been done away with, and then it went from no laws about it, so it was allowed, now to civil unions and domestic partnerships being recognized. So it went kind of from it being illegal to nothing to now we're going to give them the same rights that married couples have. So right now there's no more states that have anti-cohabitation laws, and many of them, I think just about all states have civil unions and domestic partnership laws. So they have rights to some degrees that, just depending on the state. And then, of course, some states have gone like completely, the states that have legalized same-sex marriage, I've noticed, those are the ones that are on the front of that wave. So the more okay they become with cohabitation and granting those couples rights, the more likely they were to legalize same-sex marriage right after that. So there's just a growing number of states that are kind of on the far swing of that, if that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So going along with your test driving a car, don't you think that that's a good thing to test drive a relationship so that it doesn't lead to more divorce?
Sure, that's what dating's for, but not sex. Not
but living with someone, like living with, I'm married. My husband and I had a very different relationship before we were married, not just sexually, but just in how we communicate. There's things that he does that drive me crazy. Like he gets out like 8 Q-tips instead of just one. And I'm like, why don't you just get out one if you're just going to use one? Like, what are you doing? And there's things like that that I never would have known if I hadn't been living with him. And I didn't live with him before, but it would have made the transition a lot easier.
Well, I think part of that is like there is risk, but that's part of making a commitment, right? So no matter what, even though we're gonna have our differences, even though it's gonna be tough, we're gonna have our quirks, and we're gonna work through them no matter what. I think that's part of it. There's a little bit of risk before, and a lot of times, if couples go in, a term that I kept seeing in the research is the researchers kept saying sliding into marriage. So these couples that'll move in together before marriage, it's almost like, we're almost there, so we might as well, and they just kind of slide into the marriage instead of saying, no, this is what we're doing. This is the commitment we're making. This is how serious it is. This is, it is a bit of a leap of faith, a leap of trust in the other person. And I think there is always that uncertainty of all these, unknown factors. There's a little bit of mystery and risk involved. Always, I think, but I think it's significant when couples make that clear and concise. Okay, we're going from dating to engaged, and this is the commitment we're making. We're not just sliding into it; it's a firm decision.
Isn't cohabitation seen as a form of protection to the person because you don't have to invest in the wedding, you don't have to sign the piece of paper, you can leave when you want, and so if the situation goes bad, then you just can get out without any problems? Isn't that better?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's like does away with the whole marriage and divorce part of it. And that's what's becoming more popular. Is people are like, I've seen my parents and this whole generation go through all these divorces. I don't want to go through that. So why don't we just avoid that and just live together and not get married? And then, and then the sad thing is though, and I tried to stress that, is that they bring kids into that, they bring children in, and then it gets to the point that every relationship does where it starts to not be so fun for a while. And you got to get to those rough patches, but if you're not married, it's like there's that glue that's not there that's holding you together to get through those rough patches. So it's easy. It's easy to just say, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. I'd like a new car, please. But the kids are the ones that suffer, so the most anyway.
So do you think that people who cohabitate are more religious or less religious in any way? Do you think religion has anything to?
Yeah, it definitely does. There was lots of research that shows that the more religious, in general, that a couple was, the more, whatever their specific religion, however their level of participation, the greater that was, the less likely they were to cohabitate. And the worst end of it was the people who had no problem with living with people and then also had no desire to get married. And so they just jumped from relationship to relationship. So there's kind of this middle ground with some that, some people are religious, do live together, and it's just right before they get married. But that's just as harmful. But the recent research, I think think what I read was after the year 2000, it kind of started to switch from cohabitation being a step right before marriage to now the data shows that after 2000, more couples don't expect to get married. It's like maybe out there, but like that expectation is just, so it's not even going to transition to marriage. Anyway, so that's the kind of the gradual development of it. But yeah, definitely religion, the more religious they are, the less likely they are to cohabitate, the more likely they are to value traditional marriage and traditional families and things like that. So.
Okay, awesome. Bradley, it's your turn to do your speech.
Okay, here we go. My speech is on the pro-divorce culture. Even the best of marriages can be tough in today's pro-divorce culture. It has become so prevalent that many marriages are under pressure to, let's not work out our problem, let's just get an easy, cheap divorce. Awareness of the issues in today's pro-divorce culture can help couples fight back. I have 3 important issues I believe are creating the problem. The first issue I believe is the popularity of divorce. It's the stigma that used to be there but is now gone from society. It used to be considered a failure if a marriage ended in divorce. Now it's easy to find broken families and see the effects from it. I have a friend whose mother bought her divorce contract from Walmart, filled it out along with a check, and all was taken care of. We seem to care more about how we look or what are our accomplishments and our social profile that all appears perfect than to worry about tarnishing our lives by the failure of a marriage. When telling friends and family you are divorcing, people now give a comforting embrace with caring advice and reassurances. You will probably get more attention if you announce you're divorcing than announcing you are struggling and working on improving your marriage. Who wouldn't want a compassionate ear when going through a divorce? The alternative is working it out with a spouse who is difficult and hard to get along with. The top embraces and accepting sympathy we receive when going through divorce makes it a simple option. The media doesn't help with popular shows displaying beautiful parents with even more beautiful children and no spouse in the picture, making it seem normal and the way to be happy. The second point I would like to make is the issue of sex. It's everywhere you look. Society says when you don't like your marriage, when feeling angry or betrayed or something as simple as a simple argument, you should think about giving up on your marriage. Why put up with it? We are told that sex in marriage is either completely selfish or partly manipulative. This is harmful and most true. When couples are having troubles, they usually do not even have sex. It helps establish intimacy in a marriage, and without it, the marriage will suffer. Couples will start finding the missing intimacy in places they shouldn't. Tinder keeps sex alive in those who want it, and a physical relationship can be had in as little as 30 minutes. A Business Insider magazine article reported that nearly 12% of people are in a relationship already. No matter where you are or what you are doing, there is a constant encounter and invitation to stray from marital vows. When couples struggle and are having little or no sex, and when a vast array of endless websites and apps offer interaction with a live person, and pornography presenting the thrills a struggling couple do not need at that time in their lives, it is no wonder so many relationships end in divorce. A study from 2014 by the Barna Group found that 10 men between the ages of 18 and 30 view pornography at least monthly, as do 2/3 of men between the ages of 31 and 49, and half between 50 and 68, unquote. Pornography is a problem in their lives and in their relationship, and they view it anyway. Pornography is an addiction that is hurting marriages all over the world and undermines a couple's commitment to one another. The more porn men watch, the less committed they are to their wife. It is also an unreasonable expectation for a healthy marriage, along with being mostly inappropriate. The third point I want to make is our profession and our closeness to it. We are taught from an early age to fulfill our potential through successful careers, but fail to balance that with any mention of a successful marriage and family. Our priorities become twisted and marriage falls into second or even third place. If you are not working on your marriage, you are working on your divorce. Earning a college degree prepares graduates to achieve success, but college also needs to teach them that their most meaningful accomplishment in life will be with their family and marriage. A 2012 study of 25,000 graduates of Harvard Business School, which pretty much means that they will have a good job, found that recent graduates define success as career ascent, but 20 to 40 years later in life changed and centered around family and personal lives. Success should mean raising happy, productive children who contribute to the world around them and pursue work that is meaningful and helpful. Family building deserves as much preparation and attention as individual career success. Why does society celebrate those who strive for professional success but ignore failure in marriage? The difference in the way we treat work and marriage excuses neglect in relationships and ultimately aids divorce. Today's competitive workforce has become so demanding that those seeking good jobs must devote a huge amount of their waking hours to it, which takes time, communication, and concern away from their families. The priority of a good career over a good family introduces emotional distance between couples and limits the daily physical contact with their loved ones. When couples struggle with any of these three issues, they need to discuss them right away. With your spouse cements your connection and allows you to prepare together for the impact of the relationship. By increasing communication with your loved one, you can create a barrier around you that allows it to remain sanctified and strong and will help stave off divorce as an alternative.
So I didn't really hear any laws or policies that were involved in your speech. Did you mention any?
No.
Okay.
Just my own.
All right.
So what are the next question on the review thing is about alternatives or different organizations. So what do you think, even if there's, you didn't mention any laws or anything, what do you think is the top thing that we should do as an alternative? Like, what's your number one idea?
The alternative? I would say concentrating more on your family and not your career and your life, but make it a priority.
Okay.
Please.
So then how would you encourage someone to shift away from their individualistic attitude to focusing more on their marriage?
Can you say that one more time?
So how would you encourage someone to shift away from focusing on their individualistic attitude to focusing more on their marriage?
Just to put others first. Don't think so much about put others in once you give yourself. Really, the things that I mentioned are, it's really, you're concentrating on you and what's important to you, and if you concentrate on others and your loved ones, you're going to be happy because they're happy. And that is ultimately what creates, happiness and success.
Okay, any other questions for Bradley?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. I think that was everyone, right? We all are done. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast.